Hey everybody, thanks for spending some time with me today. This is Tuesday, March 30th, the Tuesday of Holy Week. For many of us who go through this time, this season of Lent, and this is the week that we celebrate from Palm Sunday to Easter. This is an important week, one of the most important weeks of the church year, probably the most, as we remember, as we go through the last days of Jesus' life, from an entry into Jerusalem, from the crowds chanting Hosanna and celebrating, to them shouting, "Crucify him," and to his death on the cross. So we go through all of that this week, and we do it every year. And I invite you, if you want to ask any questions about any of that, or if you want to ask questions about anything. They can be silly, they can be serious. It is up to you. This time is for you. It's unscripted. There's always things, as many of you know, that I can talk about, but this is for you and for your time to ask any questions. I know there was an issue last week. I didn't get to see some of your comments till later. For some reason, it just didn't cycle through. So hopefully we can get that fixed this morning, and that it will work a little bit easier. So please, as we go through this season of Holy Week, in this time, we hear over and over again the promise, the challenges, the pain, the suffering that this Jesus goes through, this Messiah, this King, this Son of God, this act, this event is really based on, as I've been talking about for the last few weeks too, about restoring justice, about reconnecting God with humanity, with people, with our ability to recognize God at work in our world and our lives, and what that means for us, and how that impacts us, how that impacts what we do, and how we as believers function. And I think that's important for all of us to remember, and for people that struggle with faith, struggle with organized faith, struggle with that whole understanding, or have been challenged or put down or thought of as not enough in whatever church context that you have been in. And if that has happened for you, I want to apologize, because that is painful to go through. And I've seen and heard many people's stories of them leaving the church, leaving a faith community, because of how people treated them, and how the community viewed things, and believed that their way was the only way. So I encourage you to, if you have those questions, ask those questions. Spend this time, with me. And I always say, if you have a question that you're not sure if you can ask, or don't want to, put in the comment section, you can always message me, and know that, I'll respond to you privately, or if it's something you want to just lift up and raise up, we can definitely do that as well as we move forward. But this week, morning, Mike, good to see you on. Keeping you in my prayers as you go in tomorrow for your knees. But this Holy Week, this time of struggle, and I think that's it. It's we we want to ignore it. We want to gloss over it. We don't like to admit, uh, I think, and I think in our world today that anything is wrong. There's this great image, and if you haven't seen it, it's a picture of Morning Tom. It's a picture of a mirror, and in the mirror you see this apple, and the apple looks perfect and pristine, and just an amazing looking apple. But behind it, you can see that it's bruised and battered, and there's teeth marks in it. Someone has taken some out of it, and I think we as a culture have sought to put on this facade, this mask, this understanding that everything is okay, that everything's great, that our world is perfect, or that it's the best. We work to put this facade forward on social media, and we lose what it means when we go through hardship, when we go through challenge, when we go through struggle. We want to get through it as quickly as possible and to ignore it once it's happened, and to choose to not see it as growth opportunities. But in reality, those times in our lives that challenge us, that are the hardest for us, that we need to lean on others, are the times when we grow the most, are the times when we look back and go, that has really shaped who I am and what I have become in my life, and how I then move forward in all of that. And I think that's important for us to remember, especially in our world today, in our context of Holy Week, that we so quickly want to jump to Easter. We want to jump to the resurrection, to the empty tomb, to Christ being risen, and to the joy and the promise that all of that has in store. But we want to skip over, we want to brush this aside. We don't want to focus on this aspect as much as I think often we need to. Morning, Paul. And again, if anyone has any questions about anything, please feel free to drop them over in the chat. I'm glad to see that that's working this morning. And so, we walk through this. We walk through this notion of the mob shifting from cheering and praising Jesus as King to being led to shouts of crucifixion and using this violent, torturous way of death for this man who in reality had done nothing wrong except gone against tradition and sought to re-engage people in a new understanding. Yes, it's discussing Holy Week, Paul. And what does that mean for us? How do we then interpret all of that and see these stages of how easily people can be swayed, how easily people can turn from joy to anger, and there's discussion going, well, it's a lot of it was because the people didn't get their way. They wanted Jesus to become a conquering king. They wanted him to commit, toss out the Romans, use his power to just decimate the enemy. And Jesus goes, no, there's a different way. Morning, Joanne. There's this way of promise and of restorative justice that I've talked about in a couple of these already. This notion of God coming down to reconnect people with God, to offer this new way, and Jesus' willingness that in the midst of all of his teachings of caring for one another, realizing that broke into a system that challenged what the traditions were, what the norm was, and Jesus sought over and over again to break through it, to be with those and be with those in need, be with those in who are struggling. Paul says, Holy Week and Good Friday is the most important part of Christianity for me. It's bittersweet. You're right. It is, Paul. Because we go through these really challenging, painful events in the life of Jesus. We hear there's been documented proof of what the body goes through in times of crucifixion, and just the agony of knowing that is coming, of knowing what is coming, of knowing who, it was Judas who handed him over. It was Peter who denied him. It was the disciples, those closest to him, those who had been learning from him for 3 years, that scattered, that were afraid, that hid because they were afraid that they too would get arrested. And to hear these stories year after year, to be encouraged to sit in them, to be uncomfortable. Yeah, Paul, it's the saddest situations that we go through, the most painful. I think the part of it is the clearest vision too of humanity at its worst, with the leaders who were willing to get rid of Jesus by any means necessary. Paul says his crucifixion was messier, more painful than regular crucifixions because it was rushed. He was beaten and flogged, and the pain started before even the crucifixion, and this man who was innocent. There was what the only thing that he had done was he went against traditional law, in that he taught people that God wanted to be with them in a close relationship, in a strong relationship, and that just doing the motions of offering sacrifice, or not caring for one another, or not caring for the stranger, or the immigrant, or those in need, weren't ways to live according to what God had called them to do. So he was seeking to reconnect them, people, all humanity, especially the Israelites who were claimed as a light to the nations, not one to be this blinding essence, but one to bring everyone to God. And the people agreed to release Barabbas, the known killer. And yet, how often are we willing to look past, look beyond someone's actions if they agree with us, or if we agree with them, or an inability for us? And see, that's where this notion that I've been talking about restorative justice and compassionate love and humbleness, all of this swirls together, especially in this week, that it was this impact of God's promise, of God's reconnection for the world. Joanne says, I just can't fathom how, seeing miracle after miracle, how so many could still question his divine authority. Not sure if they questioned the divine authority, but I think, like so many, it was, what does that divine authority mean to me and my power? The leaders of the church and of the time, wanted to hold on to power. When people get power, the adage of, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And, this notion of not not wanting to change because they had it good. They were in power, so not wanting to give up power, and this notion of, having to change. The world around them was going to change, has changed, and yeah, and I think that what does it mean for us in the culture, in the world that we are living in today, to hear this story, to hear these events, and see the events that are going on in our world. I've had some who ask, well, is this just the end of times? Is this the plan? And whether it is or isn't, it's not. It's not for us, and it's not for us, I think, at this point to worry about, because our calling is to hear God's promise for the world. It's to be engaged in caring for others. There was a great saying, and I can't remember who said it, but two of them. One was, if you knew you were going to die tomorrow, what would you do? And it was plant an olive tree, because olive trees take years and years to be able to produce fruit, but the willingness to make something better for the next generation. Paul says the Romans were in their pocket. I don't even condemn Pilate. Pilate, what we hear of Pilate is really interesting, because it goes back and forth from him being very ruthless and him being just a puppet. So I think there's some of that where we have to see, well, how was he really acting? And for him, I think it was just, well, this is just another crucifixion. Who really cares? But I posted this on my wall. I think it was yesterday, so you can scroll back and see it. But it talks about, if you knew this was your last day, what would you do? And the response was, Jesus did, and he washed feet. In the gospel reading that we have from Monday, Thursday, it's the focus of John, where John doesn't focus as much on the meal, on communion, on this Last Supper. What he focuses on is Jesus' act of serving. And this is the passage where we get, you called me master, and if that is what I am, do what I do, serve as I have served. I've come to serve, not to be served. And where Simon Peter goes and says, you'll never wash my feet. And Jesus goes, no, you need me to wash your feet. And Pilate goes, well, my hands and my head too, cleanse me then. And Jesus, takes this lowly stage, the lowest of the low of the servant of the slave. That would be their responsibility. And here Jesus is washing the disciples' feet. And it's interesting, because many of the churches I've served, so many of them, people have told me, well, you're never gonna wash my feet. No one's ever gonna do that. And just there's a powerfulness in it, and a humbleness in it, and this notion of Christianity, faith in God, is not about gaining power. It's not about gaining money. It's not about elevating yourself. It's about getting people to see God for the gracious, loving, the compassionate, the God who seeks to connect with people, to connect with humanity, and to be pointing always to that God. And yeah, you can pull stories from the Old Testament that are of violence and brutality, all justified by God, and yet, if we look through the stories, the entirety of it, and when God really impacts people, is It is a focus of, come to me, you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. It is, be still, be silent, and know that I am God. It is, what does the Lord require of you? It's not in tradition that you do just because, but it's to do restorative justice, to love compassionately, and to walk humbly with God. It is a way to re-experience and reignite this passion that God gives each and every one of us to serve one another and to care for one another, even in these challenging times, even in these times when we are overwhelmed and anxious and, just totally spent on being stuck in, quarantine and the anxiety of it slowly opening up and the fear of what that means and everything like that. And it's these days that, I think we need to sit in uncomfortably, because they're so vital for who we are as faith-filled believers. And if you're struggling with your faith, or if you're unsure, or if you say, you know what, I don't believe, let's have a conversation. I'm willing to do that with anyone, and not to change your mind, but to be here to listen to where you're coming from, and hopefully you would give me that same respect. But I think that's it. As we move forward, these days of Holy Week, we move into Maundy, Thursday. We move into Good Friday, where we hear of the last meal, where we hear the institution of Christ's promise to be present with us in a simple meal of bread and wine, of Christ's agony in the garden, knowing what was coming, of his willingness to be arrested, beaten, flogged, and to carry that cross, and to be crucified for us, for you, for me, in all of our struggles and all of our pain and all of our anger and all of our unfaith-filled ideas and activities. Paul says Christmas, his birthday, Easter, and the resurrection are nice, but Good Friday was when we really got the proof. He knew it all. He stepped up and took the pain just to show us. Yeah, he did. And that anguish shows that powerful imagery. Really, they've done many movies on it, and some I think they've done a good job. Some I feel like they've gone over the top with, but the raw agony of what God goes through, and that's Jesus, God in flesh. But to imagine a willingness of God to know that could be stopped, yet allowing it to happen for the greaterness of all eternity, of all humanity. And as I sit through this time, I wonder, how much are we willing? How much pain, how much suffering are we willing to go through? Just to live into a newness of life. Yeah, Paul says he could have pulled himself off the cross at any time, and the Father wouldn't allow him, just to show us filthy sinners the lengths he was willing to go through to prove the prophecy. Those are powerful words. Thank you, Paul. Um, so this past Sunday, we celebrated Palm and Passion Sunday. We had a video of, we called it Stations of the Cross, Beyond the Walls. I encourage you, if you haven't watched that yet, it's on my feed. It's on the church's feed as well. Please feel free to check that out. We will be live streaming our Monday, Thursday service, our Good Friday service, and Easter morning, all here on Facebook and through our website as well. Please join with us if you are looking for a place to share in worship during those times. Monday, Thursday, and Good Friday are at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Easter is at 9:30. If you're in the local area, we're doing a sunrise service at Fairview Cemetery. If you want information on where that is or how to get there, you can reach out to me and I will give you that information. Service starts at 7 a.m. and all are welcome to share in that community worship. Unfortunately, our sanctuary seating right now is full, but we do have some extra seating in our fellowship hall. We can gather as community and participate in worship there if you would like. If you guys have any questions or anything else, I appreciate you all spending this time with me as we go through this Holy Week, this season, these challenging times. And I invite you, as we do move through this, to wrestle with this, to see the angst and the unease, and to not try to mitigate it, to not try to ignore it, but to walk through it, and in doing that, knowing you're not alone. I pray that you all have a blessed Holy Week, and that if you need anything during these days ahead, feel free to reach out. Take care, everyone. God bless. Have a great week.